Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. Welcome back to the Worth Listening podcast. Today I'm excited to introduce to you Brittney Lynn, the founder and CEO of the Human Connection Agency. Now, what is the Human Connection Agency? I think it's a dope name. It makes you kind of like thinking like, what are we doing? We're connecting the humans. Well, it's a PR and partnerships agency that helps purpose-driven entrepreneurs worldwide expand their reach, revenue, and impact through strategic PR. Now, I had the pleasure of getting to know Brittney because we both work at Student Loan Planner. If it's not self-explanatory via the title, it is a company that specializes in helping borrowers get their student loan life together. And she and I are two of the OG members of the team when we were small and making just a difference, one little student loan borrower at a time. And now we're a huge company. And I think that's very much attributed to the work that Brittney's done in the PR section of things. But why did I want Brittney to join us for part of the travel series? I think she is the perfect person because there are so many different ways to travel. And Brittney and her husband, actually her husband quit his job. Brittney has some online work. As I just mentioned, she's an entrepreneur. Quit his job. They packed up their lives in Dallas, built out a van, and started traveling all over the country. And we've heard about van life a little bit here, a little bit there, but to know somebody who's actually done it and successfully just created this new life that they wanted to be able to allow them the freedom to be able to go wherever they want. I mean, obviously within the country, I guess maybe you could put your van on a boat and take it worldwide if you wanted to. But I was really intrigued when she shared with us that she was doing the van life. And so today's episode, Brittney's going to share her personal money story, of course, about growing up in a family with financial struggles, navigating student loans, and ultimately building this successful business that we just talked about and living a life on her own terms. From paying off debt with her husband to embarking on an exciting van life journey, Brittney has made intentional choices that align with her values, because that's important at Worth Winning, and her financial goals. So I cannot wait for you all to hear the inspiring story and the lessons that she learned along the way. Let's take a listen to Brittney's money memoir. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show today. I am so excited to have Brittney, who I just told you a little bit about, but I want Brittney to tell her like real story. So Brittney, welcome to the show. And can you just give us a little introduction about like where you're from and how it all got started for you?
Having me on. I'm so excited. I have to say, when Lauren invited me on, I was like, oh my God, an Olympian has invited me on to her podcast. And I was like bragging so much to my husband. And he didn't realize that you were a former Olympian. So he was like, who the heck are you talking about? How did you get invited on this podcast? I was like, it's Lauren. So, hey, everyone, I'm just here to like brag on Lauren, basically. That's why she invited me on. No, just kidding. My name is Brittney Lynn, and I am based out of San Diego, California right now, originally from Indiana. And I currently run a PR agency called the Human Connection Agency. I've been doing that for about 8 years now. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about money, really, and business, really anything. I'm an open book, and I can't wait to get started.
Okay, well, let's get this show on the road. So let's just start at the beginning. What did your parents do from the beginning? You said you're from Indiana. Did you have siblings? What was your upbringing like?
I am an only child. Do I give like child vibes? I feel like that's frowned upon or something. I feel like people are like,
children are very independent, and you're a boss. So only child vibes, independence, that goes together.
Yes. So only child. My parents got divorced when I was 5. So I don't really I was so young that I don't really remember a time when they were together. So I wouldn't say their divorce like significantly affect my life. honestly, and I think they would agree with this, like it was best for them to get divorced. Like it wouldn't have been good for them to stay together. And my mom's had several careers. Whenever I was growing up, she was first a nurse, and then she got into helping like troubled youth programs and leading that. And then she became a teacher. She was a special education teacher. So she's always really liked working with kids. That was like, who she bonded with, just like who she really felt like she could make a difference with. And my dad was a construction worker. So he graduated high school, but he didn't go to college. Really, no one on that side of the family had gone to college until like my age group. I was the only one on that side of the family to go to a 4-year university. Yeah, so that's kind of how we grew up. I grew up in Southern Indiana. My childhood wasn't like the most idyllic childhood. There was substance abuse issues and mental health issues and just people not really taking care of themselves. And just being an only child, I feel like I had to grow up pretty quickly to just be in the world and in the house that I was living in. So it was pretty tumultuous. And I was definitely ready to leave the house after high school. Like I was ready to get out. So I think that that's part of my fearlessness with traveling and just living in a lot of different places. It's never really been like huge. It hasn't felt like huge leaps to me because I just knew growing up that I was never going to stay in the hometown that I'm from just because of all the background and things that happened in my childhood.
I have yet to have anyone on this show who had, the 2-parent household, married forever, white picket fence, everything went as perfectly planned. Like television does such a disservice to what is real life and what happens for people.
Okay, so can we talk about that for a second? Because I feel like when I was growing up, it felt like I was the only kid going through something like this. And I felt like everyone around me and all their parents, it was just like perfect scenarios. And I was just like the outsider looking in. And that's just what I wanted my whole life. And I felt like everybody else had it. Well, then I grew up and, going to college, you kind of, again, it's also part of just like growing up, you just start to open up more. And come to find out, like literally nobody comes from that type of family. Like it's even if your parents are together, sometimes there's just other situations that are going on. And so really going to college and just meeting a bunch of whole new people with different backgrounds, different experiences really opened my eyes to like, oh, I'm not the outlier here. Like everybody has these types of issues. So, but growing up, I certainly didn't feel like that. I felt like I was, the black sheep.
Yeah, I feel like so many people have that story, and it's just like I feel like that's where like you're in media. Like media has such a big influence on us, and it's like how did so many people have so much in common but feel like they were the only one? And we'll get to it at some point, but both of us work at Student Loan Planner, and if we know one thing for sure is that people come to us for student loan help, and they pretty much 90% of the time feel like they're the only one. Like I was so stupid to take on this student loan debt. Mm-hmm. I am the only one with 6-figure debt. We're like, no, there's 44 million borrowers.
You're like, I literally talked to 10 other people today. Like, I promise you, like, you're not the only one.
You are not the only one. All right. But before we get to like your high school, college days, let's just a little bit more on the childhood. Were there money messages that you heard in light of everything that was going on? Was there a piggy bank? Was there a savings account? Was there, were you taught frivolous things because of the instability of the household? But what kind of money messages did you hear growing up?
Money messages I heard growing up was always negative. It was, we never have enough. We can't afford that. Rich people are bad, or rich people take from the poor. That was the only money talk that I ever heard. I never was taught or even heard anything about creating a budget or saving. There wasn't even like, save, spend, give. That was just not even talked about. And I think it was not necessarily on purpose. I think it's just my parents did the best they could with the information that they had, but they just didn't have the information of how to manage and budget their money. And they also weren't in an environment where personal development was like something that was talked about or anything like that, where they could like learn from other people outside of their circles. It was just like, this is what our family is born into, and like this is how it's going to be forever, and we're never going to have enough money. And we didn't have a yearly vacation. I mean, occasionally we went on a vacation. Like I think we went to Disney World like once before my parents separated. If any listener is also from Indiana, it's like you go to Florida for a vacation. Like that's just where you're driving all the way to Florida. There's really no other option.
You avoid the snow because there's so much of it up there.
There's no other, like, you don't go to like, any beach in like Alabama or Georgia or anything. It's like you go to Florida. Like that's just where Midwest families go. So yeah, there was really no, tracking of money, understanding where money was going. It was just really always talked about, we don't have enough and we never will have enough. And people that do have enough are rich and rich people are bad. I'm not saying that now, but that's like kind
that
of
was the messages that you heard. Exactly. We'll get to how those messages manifested themselves in your life or how you counteracted them eventually. But another common thing that you just brought up that, like you said, people feel like they're alone, but there's a common thread that I hear all the time is this idea, the narrative now is generational wealth, generational wealth. I have to create generational wealth for my children. We got to focus more on generational wealth. Well, generations are, like what happened in the generation before, what is happening in this generation now, so that what can happen in the next generation. And a key piece of what you said was like, my parents didn't have the resources to pass down anything to me. And I think we overlook that so much nowadays. People starting to talk about generational wealth and, wanting to pass something on. But I think it's really founded in the education that you have and the education you decide to give yourself so that you can change what might have happened in the previous generation to be able to move on to that next generation. So many people just, like you said, made the best of what they could. Yeah.
And I think I really am, I'm definitely now living a life that either my parents could have only dreamed of. Like I really sought out personal finance information because I knew that I wanted to live my life differently than how I grew up. And again, I don't mean that to speak poorly of my parents. Again, it's just like, we have so much more access to information now with the internet, social media. It's just so much easier now to access this information. Whereas whenever, our parents' generation was growing up, it was like you had to have somebody influential in your life to kind of like recommend a book for you to go get it at the library or something, and it's just like, that's just so much harder to be able to execute. My father passed away a couple of years ago and, there was barely anything in his estate, like I didn't like walk away with like, it was basically pennies that I walked away with. And again, I think it's like he provided for the life that he had, but there wasn't, and also too, being a construction worker at the time that he was a construction worker, like you just weren't making as much money as someone that had, a 4-year college degree and stuff like that. So
yeah, it was meant to be one of like a menial job at the time. It has changed, like you said, quite a bit, where people are going into construction and earning pretty well. Like if there weren't a lot of, like you said, positive money messages shared, how did you go from, like you're under 18 and you're under someone's care, under someone's roof, and then it's like 18 happens and you have this like plethora of options, this first round of adulting, if you will, college, military, some other thing, getting a job, etc. What were the conversations like in your household? How did you make a plan for what you wanted to do? Like, did you feel kind of like, okay, after this, I'm going to go do this, and you're all neat and organized, or was it like all over the place?
Right? Like at 18, oh my God, not organized at all. I literally had no idea what I was doing. It was very much from both my parents. Like it was just expected, like I'm going to go to a 4-year university. And I think a reason why my dad kind of pushed that was because he did want something different for me. He didn't want me working a manual labor job because he knew how much it was like physically a toll on his body. Sometimes he would have to have jobs that were 4 hours away from home. So it's like he wasn't home all the time. So he wanted a cushier job for me, and he knew that likely that way. But I didn't have a lot of money. So actually a very pivotal moment for me was, I think it was in the 8th grade. My school counselor, there was this program going on in the state of Indiana where if you were below a certain income threshold, that you could get your entire college to the tuition completely free and paid for 4 years. But you had to fill out this like certain paperwork, and it had to be by this certain time. And this counselor was like riding on me. And again, I was in the 8th grade. So I just at the time, I just like wasn't thinking about like how monumental that was going to be for me to have that paid for. But she was, I mean, she knew my, home income status, and she was like, you gotta do that. So my tuition was like thankfully paid for, just because we were so poor that we qualified for this certain program, but I still had to pay for all my living expenses, housing, all of that kind of stuff, during college. So I did have to take out student loans. And let me tell you this, I don't know if you grew up similarly, but literally nobody was telling me about student loans. Like nobody was like really helping me understand like the ramifications. And again, if I could go back in time and do something different, would I? Probably not, because I truly didn't have any other option. But I didn't really know like what I was signing, like I didn't have a true understanding. Is that a common thing that you find on through these interviews?
100%. I mean, most of the audience is millennials. So, us looking back on our 18-year-old selves, I think we're like 28 to 42 now is what they call the millennials. But you're looking back on, you're like, gosh, I was an idiot at 18. Like I was a kid. Like 18 is some milestone age that the world says you meet adulting, but you have zero idea how to adult. My 21-year-old self didn't. My 25-year-old self that could finally like rent a car on my own. I was like, that's the last time that you're like officially an adult. And I'm like, I think I became a preteen when I was 30, like,
no, and again, I think now as time has progressed, I think that there is a lot more access to information. I think a lot of people are more aware of what they're signing up for with student loans. So please, if you're listening to this and you have student loans and you feel guilty that like you shouldn't, honestly, like we were all in the same boat. Like we are all in the same boat. I had no idea. And so that was kind of my like going into college experience. And so I had a really great time in college. I loved the university that I went to. I went to Purdue University.
Okay.
So part of the stipulation with the grant that I got to pay for my tuition, I had to go to an Indiana state school, which honestly, I probably wasn't going to go anywhere else anyways. But I did a semester. I at first started at Indiana University, which is, if you're from Indiana, like that's the rival university of Purdue. I absolutely hated my time there. It was just like not the fit for me. And then I transferred to Purdue the second semester of freshman year. Had an amazing time, had an amazing experience, have so many friends from there, had just like the quintessential. I majored in PR, so in communications PR. When I first went into college, I was undecided. I honestly, it is still crazy to me that at 18, they're like, okay, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? It's like,
exactly. I'm just shocked to hear you say that you are doing the thing that you went to school for, because I'd say 99% of people are not.
Well, and the funny thing is like Purdue is not known for that. Like Purdue is an engineering school. Sometimes people think it's an Ivy League school, and I just don't correct them on that. I'm just like, oh, you think I went to an Ivy League? Like, sure. But I mean, Purdue's very like engineering focused. I knew that that was not going to be my thing. So I just went the liberal arts route. But the first year, I was the outlier of all my friends where I was undecided, because I was just like, I don't what I want to do. And then by sophomore year, they're like, okay, you got to figure out what it is that you want to do.
Right.
So just College of Liberal Arts Communications just kind of made the most sense. Like I knew I wasn't going to do anything science or math related. I didn't want to be a teacher. Now looking back, like I would have taken more business classes, but that was not on my brain at all. It was like, I'm not a business person. What do I know about business?
Right. Once again, like you said, what
again,
do you know at 20 to or 19 or whatever you were at this particular time?
Totally.
Yeah. You also brought up like friends. You're like, okay, my friends. And I was like, this is like the one true time too that you like kind of transition out of your household. And I don't know if you were living on campus or, you know, how it played out for you, but you get this whole new group of friends because, you know, some people switch around, bump in between different schools from elementary to high school, etc. But generally everybody is going to a different place for at least the first time, if not, you know, second or third time when they get off to college. So did you notice like a difference in lifestyle, status, you know, money management, things like that when you got to your college experiences?
At college, I call it a sorority type house. They're called co-ops at Purdue. And it's different than co-op, like when you like work a semester and then go to school a semester. It's literally not associated with that at all. I wish they need to rebrand, my personal PR opinion. But it's called cooperative housing, and they have guy houses and girl houses on campus, just like sororities and fraternities. You pledge, you rush, you become an active, you partner up with other, you know, fraternities to do events and stuff like that. It's really the same as a sorority or fraternity. The only difference is we don't have national chapters. It's just like these are the houses at Purdue, and also we do so it's honestly like a diamond in the rough. It's such a great option because it was literally the cheapest way to live on campus. When I'm going to tell you what my monthly rent was, you're going to drop your jaw.
Lay it on us. Lay it on us.
$350 a month, and that included food.
Wow. I mean, we're old, y'all, but we are not that old. That is very, very.
Yes. Even at the time, even, you know, that was like 2006 to 2010 era. Like, I mean, my husband, who was in a fraternity, he paid like $2,000 a month or something and all of that like basically went to like the national chapters and stuff. So it really like helped. Obviously, like we all complained about like having to like cook and clean and all that kind of stuff, but it really did help you become an adult. Like some girls came into the house and had never done laundry before. I'd been doing laundry since I was like 8. So I was like, let me show you the ropes. You know, and some people, it's like they've never cooked before. And it really just puts you in an environment where you have to learn those life skills and you have to learn how to communicate and problem solve with other people that you live with. And a lot of times you don't get that, you know, growing up. And even if it's siblings, like that's different, where it's like these are people that aren't your family, but like you got to figure out how to live together.
Right. Different personalities, different upbringings. Yeah.
Different 100%. There were certainly like, you know, friends that were like in different income levels that you could tell, but there were a lot of people that were in similar boats as I was. And so that was really just like an eye-opening experience of like, oh, I'm not really an outlier. Like there's so many other people like me. I wouldn't say money was like a thing that was talked about openly. Like it wasn't really like a conversation piece. But also I think, you know, Purdue is based in a city called West Lafayette, and like West Lafayette exists because Purdue is there. And so it's really a college town. You know, I used to live in Dallas for a bit of time. You know, universities, I think people that go to universities that are in bigger cities maybe have a totally different experience because I was in a college town, like, you know, small hometown bars. Like it just was middle of nowhere, Indiana, and some cornfields. Like it was just a different, you know, there wasn't
like I'm from a small town as well. When I went to high school, and like 88 people in my graduating class, you know, messing around with people's cows was a thing that we did on the weekend, etc. And then I switched all the way to, big city life. And you're right, my college experience was nothing like yours. At the University of Miami, we could go to the club on the weekend and Shaquille O'Neal could be in the club. So probably wasn't
It
hanging
was
out
like
with
not
Mafia
a thing.
Indiana. Right.
Like, yeah, we did not club. There were no clubs. There were bars, but there was no clubs. And again, too, social media, Facebook was like a thing, and like we'd all upload all of every single picture we took that night, like in a Facebook album. And then I'm like, oh my God, why would I do that? That's so stupid. But there wasn't Instagram. Like there wasn't really like comparison that you were doing. It was just, we were all going to class, living together, going out, but really we didn't talk about money. And I didn't feel like money was like shown, like there wasn't really like known differences between where we all came from individually.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So what ended up happening then? You got through school, you said you won school, second school, HR, PR as a major. What happened when you got out of school? What was your first job? What was that job hunting experience like? What did you think you're going to do versus what actually ended up being your first job? Give us a little bit of like, I think round 2 of the first round of adulting, if you will.
Totally. So during college, there were a couple summers that I just like took off and like didn't do anything and was living it up. Then junior year, I actually worked at a summer camp in upstate New York. That was a crazy experience. That was where I saw a money difference because people paid $40,000 to send their kids to like an 8-week summer camp. And I was like, I didn't come from a summer camp. That doesn't happen in Indiana. It's like you have like a weekly, like maybe summer camp that you still go home at the end of the day, but like going to like an actual camp, like Parent Trap style, I didn't know that actually existed.
And you're saying 40,000. I mean, fresh out of school, that's like an entry level salary. So some people are paying for summer camp, maybe somewhere in the range of what you're making at that time.
For their 5-year-olds.
Right.
Some of them had 5-year-olds at the summer camp. I mean, I was not getting paid that as a camp counselor. I was getting paid absolute crap.
Right. See? Right.
You get room and board. So then graduating college, I had a lot of jobs. I graduated in 2010. I had such a hard time finding a job. Like it was, again, we were still coming off of like the 2008 crash. Nobody wanted to hire a recent grad that has absolutely no experience. I applied to 200 jobs. I mean, I was always applying, and I was applying anywhere, everywhere. Like I would go anywhere in the United States. And again, I didn't really have an idea of like, oh, I definitely want to work in-house, or, oh, I definitely want to work at a PR agency. There's kind of different options for PR. And I was even like open to like just general marketing, just anywhere that I could get my foot in. So one of the first places, I did at some point, I eventually was like, I got to start paying like my phone bill and stuff. So I got a job at TGI Fridays as a hostess. And Lauren, this is so embarrassing. I literally worked there 3 hours and then I didn't go back again. I couldn't hack it. People that work in the restaurant service industry, like I will literally kiss the ground that you walk on. Like you guys are I couldn't hack it. I could not do it. It was so much stress. I wasn't even a waitress. Okay. I was a host.
3 hours you made it.
I did my first 3-hour shift, and then I went back and I was in my car and I called my mom and I'm like, I'm not doing this. I got to go find another job.
Wow.
So then I got a job at Bath and Body Works, and it was it was coming up on the Black Friday time. And I worked a few shifts there, and then I got a job at the local Chamber of Commerce. And so then I had to quit that job. And so then I kind of felt bad about myself because I like literally had quit these 2 jobs. It's been like such little time. So I worked at the Chamber of Commerce for a little bit. And then my husband was finishing up his degree. And then we moved to Milwaukee. And so he got a job in Milwaukee that we didn't know anybody. We weren't really excited about moving there, but again, it was 2010. That was just where you took a job, where you got a job. Right. So he was in engineering, and so he took a job, and again, back to applying for tons of jobs. I worked so many internships. Honestly, I was so desperate that I was just like, I guess I'm going to do some internships to just like get more experience, spend my time. Most of them I was getting paid absolute zero. And one of the internships that stood out to me to bring up was I worked at, I can't even remember the name of it. It was like an outdoors channel that was like about hunting and fishing and things I do not know anything about. Things my family doesn't do any of that. I've never done any of that. I'm not interested in any of that. And I was over here like doing social media posts, writing press releases, talking about stuff I had absolutely no experience in. And then, but it was just like, it was something to do and to get experience, get my foot in the door. And then eventually I got a job at a recruitment company. It was in their social media department. And so again, this was like 2011, and it was right whenever social media started having business pages. Up until that point, it was really like personal pages. And so it was me and one other girl. We were a department of two, and we were just making stuff up because again, it was 2011. There was no social media strategy for things. There weren't even ads at the time. It was just like organic posting. And so really we had kind of free range to just like do whatever. But it was very honed in on social media. And I knew that I didn't want to stay in social media, like only social media long term. So then I worked at a university in downtown Milwaukee, and I really liked the university environment. It certainly has its pros and cons, but there is just something about that environment of people, like, it's just invigorating to me. Like people are, there's new students all of the time. They're excited about their majors. There's always just stuff going on. It's just like a fun energy. But I absolutely hated my boss. Like she was so horrible.
I feel like this is going to lead us to how you became an entrepreneur. Is like working for other people was just not a thing for you, right?
It's setting right up. So really any of my jobs, I just never had an amazing boss. I either had a very mediocre boss. I had a boss who literally didn't know my name until the day that I quit. Or I had a boss that was just absolutely terrible, awful person.
Wow. Yeah. Such an unfortunate situation. Some people always like the great exodus that happened during COVID and so many people, but I think it speaks volumes to, like you said, the leadership or the lack of leadership that exists in some of the corporate world now, and why people are, leaving their 9 to 5 when they got cushy benefits and things like that, we don't get as entrepreneurs, but, it does matter how you treat people.
And I think, especially because it was at a university too, she was working for tenure because she was also a professor. And the university environment, I will say, it's very hard to fire someone. Mm-hmm. So during that time, my husband and I got married. And then that was when we, again, up until this point, like not paying attention to finances, just spent a lot of money on our wedding, but not paying attention. We got married. It was time. We decided we wanted to put our finances together. So we were like, okay, let's sit down. Let's look at what our situation is. We know we have some debt, but like, we don't really know exactly what it is. And I will tell you that meeting that we had together, one, was horrible. It was not fun to do at all, because we realized the debt situation was bigger than probably what our brains were telling us. But it was the most transformative meeting. It was why I'm here today as a business owner, because it really set us on the track of figuring out, knowledge is power. Like we knew what the situation we were dealing with, and then we can make a plan to fix it.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like so many people are in a situation where, there's like young and having fun, and then they fall in love. And, we are told once again by television, like, love is enough. Love is all you need. but we know that more than 50% of the relationships that end as a result of poor financial decisions or not being able to get on the same page financially. And so love is not the only thing that we can do. If we ignore what we really need to understand as a household, we're not setting goals together. We're not, working together as a team to really understand like, hey, where are we at and where do we want to be? It sets you up for failure.
And I will say we both got very lucky because we were thankfully on the same page like the whole time with our money. I don't know how it would have worked if I wanted to pay off debt, but my husband didn't want to pay off debt. And I know that so many people are in those situations where they can't seem to get on the same page. I didn't have to deal with that. Like both of us were just on the same page somehow. So I do feel really fortunate in that regard.
Oh, yeah.
So basically for 2 years, we were in debt paying mode, and we did somewhat follow the debt snowball. I agree with a lot of what Dave Ramsey talks about. And again, we did it in our own way, but we were young and newlyweds, but we were like locked in paying off all of those debts. And so we were really laser focused on that for 2 years. And then it just happened. The timing happened where my husband got a new job in Dallas. And that month that we moved was our last debt payment. So I already had to quit my job because I couldn't still work in Milwaukee and move to Dallas. So I had to quit my job. So it was a time where it was like, oh, I could try out working for myself since every other boss I've had has been horrible. Like maybe I'll be better.
I think that's a really good point too about the idea, when you can as much as possible. The stars are not going to align for everyone, but like for you to be able to quit your job and be debt free, it takes a lot of pressure off of you. It's like, yeah, I still have expenses. I still got to feed myself, etc. But when you have a spouse, that's one thing that helps. But the other piece of the puzzle is like usually the monthly expenses, like we always focus so much on like, oh, I can afford this monthly payment. And we don't think about like how long I have to afford this monthly payment, the mortgage, the car payment, the so-and-so. And, things times 10 or 20 years, and you got 3 or 4 of those, like you can't afford to quit your job because those things don't stop even when you don't have a job versus, like you said, clean slate and not having a lot of other obligations. That gives you a really good opportunity to be able to say like, okay, like how can I pivot? How do I want to move?
We were just very much like, we're going to pick an apartment that fits in the budget of what his salary was. And that was just like, that's what we're going to do to try to make this work. We didn't necessarily give myself a certain timeline of like, this has to work by X date, but we were regularly checking in with each other being like, okay, how long do I give this? If I was going for 3 years and not making any money in my business, it's like, okay, well, this isn't working. But also, I was starting a business from absolute scratch. I had no web presence. Again, we moved to Dallas, knew nobody. I had no connections. I didn't even know what I was going to offer as services. Like I was starting brand new. So I knew I needed some time to build up.
Right. Figure it out. Good old fashioned figure it out.
Exactly. And so then, over time, that was 8 years ago. In that time, my husband was able to quit his job. He came into my business, and then now like kind of roles are reversed where this business is our entire household income, and we're able to, make it work for us and live the life that we want to live.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because you're right. We're on a travel episode here. And the thing that, I told you guys a little bit in the episode, but we've arrived now is that your husband didn't just quit his job. He quit his job because you guys were moving into a van. So it's like, I had to quit my job because we were literally leaving Dallas because we bought a new home which had 4 wheels. So tell us a little bit about this journey. Like, how did you guys decide van life was a thing? To actually like sell? Did you sell all of your belongings? Did you sell your house or whatever you were living? Like, what did that look like?
We were in Dallas and we had a 4-bedroom home, and we were starting the IVF process, and all these things were happening. And then you can probably imagine what the next thing is. The pandemic hit. And so we were literally a week away from me starting the medication for the IVF. And then the pandemic hit. And then we couldn't do it because it was a I can't remember what it was, like non-urgent procedure, basically. So they just canceled everything. So we were stuck in our home. And at the same time, my 24-year-old cousin, she was diagnosed with leukemia. And in June of 2020, she ended up passing away. And so we had to drive from Dallas to Ohio for her funeral because, again, it was pandemic time. So we didn't want to fly and all that kind of stuff. So we were on our drive back home, and it was very much what are we doing with our lives? Like, do we like where we live? Are we living the life that we want to live? Are we doing the things that we want to do? I feel like, death situations you reflect on your own mortality, you just reflect on your own life, and can be, just make you super reflective of where you spend your time and how you're spending your money. And so we had a 10-hour drive, and we were talking, and we were like, what if we traveled in an RV? And again, at the time, I had no idea about van life. I just knew about RVs, and I knew that some people traveled full time out of RVs. So we got back, started doing a ton of research. And again, we were on the same page this whole time. So it wasn't like one of us was trying to convince the other. And just through YouTube, honestly, we ended up finding van life people, and we were like, oh, people like convert these Sprinter vans. Like, this is crazy. So then, and again, we were stuck in our house. We couldn't travel anywhere. There was nothing for us to do. So we would just watch, we'd work during the day, and then at night, it was like we were just plowing through YouTube videos. Eventually it came to we had a giant Post-it, and we were comparing, if we did RV, if we did a van and we built it out, if we bought one that already existed, we just kind of did a pros cons list. And we ended up on building out a van. And so really from the time that we decided to start doing this, or the conversation started, to when we bought the van was like 3 months. It was like super quick. And then 3 months after that, he put in his notice. We sold our house. And again, we were selling in January 2021, right? So it was like prime time for us to sell, and also prime time for us not to have to buy, because that was the problem then, was like, yeah, you get a lot for selling, but it's going to be hard to buy. And we were like, great, we're selling and we're not buying. So we got way more than asking for our house, and honestly, like for what it was worth at the time. But we sold 90% of our things, and we had an empty cargo van, and Ryan, my husband, built out the whole thing. It was literally absolutely empty. He built it into a home, had a bed, running water, heater, fridge, like everything that you could need to live in. We also have 2 big dogs,
a toilet,
60-pound dogs, a toilet. We had a toilet.
That's important to live.
Yes. We did have, we had an outdoor shower. So we oftentimes would shower at like Planet Fitness or like campground showers, like stuff like that. So yeah, so then he built out the van for 5 months, and that was his full-time job then, because he had like design all of that. And then we were out on the road and just living in a van. And really part of the reason why we wanted to do that was to find the place that we really wanted to live. We found that with the pandemic, Dallas has no nature. There's no greenery. There's not a hill. It's just concrete, and there's not a lot to do. And obviously it gets very hot. And we were just kind of like done with that. And so we used our travels to find the next place that we wanted to live. And that ended up being San Diego, which is where we're currently at.
Wow. Okay. So long trip home after a kind of life altering experience, which you're right, so many people, especially if you had know someone that dies younger, or we all think we're going to live to 100, and then when you have a friend that dies in their 20s or their 30s, and it's just like, hey, this is way too soon. It does cause you to reevaluate things. But conversation that was just like, hey, if we're going to live our best life, our best life is not working at this place, it's not living in this city. What does that look like? Let's move into a van. We don't need all of this stuff, which is like completely opposite of the American way. Like, we are consumers in America. Like, how dare you say you don't want all the things in your 4-bedroom house and that you're going to have everything you need in a van, right?
No, totally. The stuff part was the easiest part for me. Like, it literally took nothing. We were immediately like, we don't need this, that. Like, I just had no ties to any of our stuff. And
did you have a easy time selling it? Or did you doesn't even matter, and I paid $600 for this thing, it's just like $100, it's yours, get it out of here, because like it's not important? Or how was that process?
We sold like all of our bedroom furniture, and we had it for a while. So I was like, we wanted to sell that to like make some money off of it. But honestly, there was a lot of things we would just put out onto our corner driveway, post in our neighborhood Facebook group. It was literally like the Bermuda Triangle things. We'd put it out, it would be disappeared in 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's unbelievable in Texas. I do think it's a phenomenon that other people maybe don't have, depending on like culturally who's around. But I had a yard sale recently in Dallas. I also lived in Dallas for a bit. And I made maybe $25 at my yard sale. And then I was just like, gosh, what am I going to do with this? So to your point, I don't have as easy a time. Like, this is my stuff. I need it. It's valuable, but I can't just throw it away. And then I was just like, Lauryn, don't bring it back in the house. If you were willing to sell it, you don't need it. So put it on the curb. Within like 15 minutes, it's like they knew that the sale was over and that I was going to get rid
Step
of it.
away. You barely, I don't know. They have like senses. I don't know how they all know, but we would barely get back into the door. It would all be gone. There were certainly things that I kept, we kept photo albums and like stuff from our childhood and yearbooks and, those kind of sentimental things we certainly kept. And we had a small storage unit that housed all of those things. Some paintings that like meant something to us, but really most things I was like, look, in the future, if I want it again, I'll just buy it again. Like I just really had no sentimental value to anything. And I don't know if that's because I was going through grief at the time and it was just kind of like, none of this matters, or I don't know. I haven't really ever been like a super like material person. Like, I was going to say,
would you refer to yourself as like a minimalist?
Yeah, I don't like shopping. Like, it just seems like a nuisance. Like, I don't know. So I've never really been like a things person. I've been certainly more of an experience person.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about like what it costs to do van life, because like I said, somebody's like, wait, this is a real thing that people are doing and you all enjoyed it. And hold on a second here. And you sold your house to do it. I think some people are like, I can't afford a house, so maybe a van life is a thing. And that's definitely an option. But you guys decided to get rid of a house and live in a van. And how did that impact your overall finances? And what did the cost look like?
Really, the way, kind of where the conversation started was like, Ryan, he did like his job, but we just wanted something that was a little bit more flexible to be able to like go see family, all that kind of stuff. So really, that's kind of where the conversation started of like, okay, well, if Ryan is to quit his job, like obviously our household income is going to significantly decrease. But what are options that we can do to live? We didn't necessarily want to move to like a lower cost city at that time. So it was like, okay, that's not an option. And so again, whenever we were doing the, pros, cons list of each of the types of like RV, van, all that kind of stuff, it can cost as little or as much as you want, right? Like, there are RVs that are literally the price of houses. Like, they're like $300,000.
Wow.
Or you can get like a used affordable one. We decided that we didn't want to get a used one. We wanted a brand new one. We wanted to know what we would be inheriting
Mhm.
especially if we're living in a vehicle. And it's like, if we're living in this thing full time, we want to be sure that it's like under warranty and can get fixed. And we know that it can run.
Right. It's
Whereas
like I'm
buying the
already
used,
homeless in the sense of how other people would
right,
think of it. I don't want
right.
to be stuck on the side of the road in my home.
So it's definitely it's living very differently. And we loved it, and we knew it wasn't going to be forever. But a big reason why it worked for us, yes, we sold the house and that helped, give a financial cushion for us. But also me being a business owner, it's like my income isn't capped. And so it's risky because, being a business owner, it's like I can have a client who suddenly doesn't want to renew their contract or whatever it is. But it also kind of gave us limitless earning potential. And I can make my own schedule, make my own meetings, which again, as you're traveling, going to different time zones, all that kind of stuff, having that flexibility was really, really helpful. There are tons of people that travel full time out of vans and RVs that have remote jobs. So it is possible.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, how does
To
internet work? Because, like you said, if you're running a fully remote situation, did you guys have like a Starlink? I know that's popular, or like,
Starlink's very popular. When we were first starting, Starlink wasn't as popular, so we didn't get that. We just had like a Wi-Fi thing that we had, and then we made it different. So we had it be AT&T, or we did T-Mobile for the Wi-Fi, and then our phones were Verizon, so that if we were in different locations, like sometimes Verizon service is better, sometimes T-Mobile is better. So we wanted to do separate ones from our phones so that if we were having bad signal, like we had a backup kind of. Really, the only place where we had problems with Wi-Fi was in Flagstaff, Arizona. I don't know why specifically there. Like we had better reception outside of the Grand Canyon in the middle of nowhere versus like in town in Flagstaff. I don't know. I wouldn't
wow,
recommend Flagstaff. I'm sorry to listeners who live in Flagstaff, but like it just wasn't our vibe.
right, dead zone, a very serious dead
Dead zone.
zone.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I want to wrap up with just kind of like what we call like rapid fire questions. So the first one is there a money mistake that you've made that you've kind of had to work through during the course of your career that stands out to you?
Not knowing what I'm spending until I turned 24. And if you're older than 24 right now and you're like, I don't know what I'm spending, like the next best time to figure it out is right now. So don't feel guilty that you haven't done it before. Like the next best time is to start right now.
Amen to that. It is not too late. All right, you got $20 in your pocket. What do you spend it on?
Probably a book. I like
Okay,
reading.
I love it. I love it. Best money habit that you have?
I would say we regularly have money dates where we get out of the house and we go to a coffee shop or someplace that we've been wanting to try. We bring our laptops and we sit down and talk about our money, talk about our budget, talk about what's coming up. Again, I said this earlier, but like knowledge is power. So knowing what your financial situation is the best way for you to improve your money situation. But and having those money dates kind of help, and having it be in a different environment is really, really helpful. And causes it to like not get into fights because like you're kind of in public,
Exactly. That's a good strategy. I like that. Most meaningful gift that you've received?
When my dad passed, one of my friends, she gave me a wind chime, and my dad loved wind chimes, but she had no idea. She did not know. And so when she gifted to me, I was like, did I tell you that he, and she was like, oh no, she's like, I just thought it was like a nice thing to have. And I was like, okay. So it just felt like it was like meant to be.
Right, like your dad was almost gifting it to you. Yeah, that's so cool. I feel like a lot of times people say something and it's not, a Ferrari or yeah, generally it's like something that's free or very low cost and yeah, very
Yeah.
meaningful. So, all right. Worst advice you've ever received?
I'm going to talk smack about Dave Ramsey. The part that I don't understand with him, he advises no credit cards. And I get why he's saying that because some people are to not pay off their credit card every month. But as a business owner, he says like, oh, you can't get anything with points. Dude, the Southwest Companion Pass, we've had so many free flights from that. Like, there's so much access to things with a credit card. And again, you shouldn't be getting into debt with it, but I just think that that's such blanketed advice that's just not good.
Yeah, that blanket advice can be so harmful, and it has been to so many. We are not going to go on that rampage today, but I'm not a
Cease and
fan
desist.
of the blanket, right? Exactly, of the blanket advice that people are giving that is harmful to others. All right, last thing, something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
I love walking. So we specifically picked an area in San Diego where we could walk to anything, everything. We live next to like 40 different restaurants that we could walk to. We still haven't eaten at all of them yet. We lived here for almost a year. And it's just a great way of exercise, low impact, gets me outside, gets me in the sun. So walking, listening to a podcast, one of my best free things to do.
I love it. I love it. I know I said that was the last one, but this is the for real last one. One thing that you would like to improve about your personal finances in the upcoming year.
So we are child free. And at this point now we've decided to be child free by choice. And I think that there has been investment in retirement advice that we have just taken because it's what the standard status quo is. Now this is actually through like one of my clients that I have. Now we're realizing like, oh, we might need to look at this from a different lens, being child free. Because again, most people have kids and you set up your retirement in certain ways to pass on that wealth to the kids and et cetera. And so it's like, if we're not having kids, we might need to look at things differently. So we just kind of had that realization recently. We're going to be working on that.
All right. So what's the action item that you're going to be taking to like figure that out?
So this is going to sound like it's a promo, but I have a client called Child Free Wealth, and they help people specifically who are child free with their finances. And so really just learning from them of just different things, like the 4% rule for investing and all that kind of stuff. It's like that might not apply to people that are child free. Right. So it's really kind of just like digging into anything that we've set up investment wise and like retirement wise. I just want to like relook at through the lens of like what our goals are for the future. So
I love that. And I'll add Child Free Wealth to the show notes as well. Okay, time to shine, Brittney. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know we ran a little bit over. I hope it's not a client who's going to be angry with us because you're a little bit late, but shout yourself out.
So it's okay. It's okay.
Yes, shout yourself out. Tell us how we can support you, where we can find you, anything that you want to share with the listeners.
So my PR agency, it's Human Connection Agency, humanconnectionagency.com. You can find out information there. We work with business owners, entrepreneurs, authors. I'm also most active on Instagram, so you can find me at Brittney Lynn.
All right, sounds good. I'll add all that to the show notes as well. Thanks again for sharing your van life with us. I know somebody's going to be moved by it. I can't wait to get the email about somebody who decided to live in a van because Brittney did it too.
Great chatting with you.